Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us at the Public Safety Committee meeting. We have 3 items on the agenda today. The first item that's listed is a briefing on the police use of force. And then we have 2 other, good morning, we have 2 other items. Item number 2 is the Outdoor Firearms Training Center, and the third item is the Public Safety Training Academy Academic Building Complex. Those two and 3 should take less than 10 minutes, and maybe I'm giving a whole lot of time for item 2 more than it needs. But we're going to do those 2 first, and then let Mr. Dice and Mr. Assant go fix some buildings up as they right after this. So with that, Ms. Farag, can you please, unless the committee members have anything to say at this point, if not, Ms. Farag, can you please lead us through the 2 packages?
Thank you. Yes, these are 2 recommended amendments to the FY23 through 28 CIP. One is under the Police Department for the Outdoor Firearms Training Center, and the other one is an other public safety project for the PSTA Academic Complex, and that's the old site where the old Public Safety Training Academy used to be, and it has been sold and went under some development, site work and that type of thing, and that we'll get to that shortly. The Outdoor Firearms Training Center, however, the recommendation for this year's CIP is to delay the project by 2 years, and that pushes out about $3.4 million out of the 6-year expenditure schedule, and that was done for fiscal capacity in the overall CIP. We've talked about this. It's been delayed several times. It's been brought in as a full project. It was taken out during the recession. It was brought back with some little, very minor upgrades and repairs, and then something that looks more like the original project is back in the CIP now, and that's expanding both the pistol range and the rifle range, the long gun range, as well as to redevelop the earthen berms that provide protection to surrounding communities and properties. There's not a lot out there, but it does provide protection. You don't know who might be trespassing behind other areas. The total project cost is about $5.5 million. Again, it was delayed for 2 years. I have great concerns about delaying the project in general because it's absolutely needed for training, for use of force, to provide the muscle memory and the judgment calls and different types of training that are involved with firearms, which is obviously deadly force, to make sure that everybody has been trained as well as they can be trained. I cannot, however, find any other fiscal capacity in the CIP to recommend accelerating this. One of the things that the committee might look at is accelerating by year. However, that does bring in most of the cost. It brings in $3 million. So.
So with that, to Mr. Dice or Mr. Assant, did you have anything to add?
Well, we don't have, it's David Dice, Director of General Services. We don't have a whole lot to add. Moving dirt is very expensive, and the conditions of the berms out at the firing range have deteriorated significantly. They're lower than they ought to be, so there's a concern about safety as well. Even though there's a large buffer around the firing range, the berms should be enhanced. And as well as the outbuildings, I was pleased to see some of these structures that have been eliminated in the past restored. So this is an important project, but again, as Ms. Farag has mentioned, fiscal capacity is impacting projects all across the CIP. This is one of those. So the facility exists. It's not in an optimum state of repair, but the choices that were made was because it exists and it can still be used. It's just not optimal at this time.
Is there anything that can be done for the safety side that if you did it now, when we finally do get the dollars together, that you wouldn't have to replace? I mean, if there's something that's safe for safety reasons, we need to consider doing.
Well, I'll defer to my police colleagues. I know that it has impacted the types of firearms that they can practice with. It's affecting range and the full range of, use range in 2 different senses, the full range of training that they can do at the range. So I'll defer to police as to their training regimen and how this is impacted.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Council Member. Darren Frank, Assistant Chief of Police, Management Services Bureau. So we're constantly monitoring the conditions at the outdoor range to ensure that it remains safe for officers, and then, as Ms. Farag noted, anyone that may wander onto the property. Right now, we can still continue operations. It's not optimal. The expansion would allow us, especially with our rifles, to have better training and more training as we see violent crime increase and the need to have those rifles available. We want to make sure our folks have the best training, and the best training, you need extra distance. We work through finding other options for the training while we can. I think when you look at some other issues that we have, our focus on use of force right now and our focus on de-escalation, we're able to meet our mission for the time being through other resources, connections we've made. Eventually, this does need to be done to keep us safe and to keep us at operating at an optimal training level. But as already noted, there are some other projects, the 6th District being one of them, that are a priority, and unfortunately, it seems that the financial situation across the country is affecting our progress.
And we're in agreement. Obviously, the 6th District was some. Part of my concern is that we keep saying, yes, we need this, and let's get to this in a couple of years. I think your suggestion, Ms. Farag, of saying we'll go along with this, but let's accelerate it let's hold it for the 1 year and accelerate it by 1 year, is perhaps the right way to go, because we need to have this discussion continually. In my opinion. And then one of the other discussion areas is whether or not the executive has pursued other funding sources. Mr. Dice, would you be the one to know that answer, or would be?
I think we'd have to talk to OMB and find out what other sources may be available, if there are, as part of infrastructure acts and others to fund this. It's frankly, as you can see in this highlight scope of the overall CIP, it's just not that a lot of money. I don't mean to sound like a overly prosperous county here, but in the light of a multi-billion-dollar CIP, $5.4 million isn't that much. But they all have impact on everything. I mean, you mentioned deferring projects. You'll be seeing red brick courthouse repairs, which are desperately needed and have been deferred to the point where they can't be deferred anymore. And so this project will come to that point. It's almost there, but not quite yet. As to existence of other funds, I'd defer to OMB.
Well, and obviously we want to hear from the other committee members, but Ms. Frog, where I am at this point is I believe that we should go along with your suggestion but accelerate it for the 1 year, which was also your suggestion, and that we should have either an updated discussion on if there's the possibility for additional funding from someplace else, or what we're doing and how we're doing it. So with that, committee members, please.
So I have a couple questions for you. Is the damage to the berms, the accelerated damage to the berms, accelerated by the types of storms we've been having, by erosion type aware?
It's normal erosion that takes place on earthen berms over a period of time. They're risen, compacted, protected. Erosion control measures exist, but they're earthen berms, and
right.
Over the course of 20, 30 years, they erode.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. How long had they been there? In the interim, has there been any attempt to use other facilities available for the type of training that you might need, the enhanced training that you were talking about, like using this facility in Sykesville?
So right now we've had good progress with using our own police training academy. We have 2 ranges there. Yeah. That for the longest time we didn't have. So they've become a great option. One of the ranges is a static range where we do normal qualifications. The other range gives us some flexibility with doing scenarios that we would do at the outdoor range. So we're utilizing that more. Okay. So right now we have a very good substitute. However, the more you use it, the more it's going to wear. So having both is ideal.
Right. So that makes better balance over time. Gotcha. And with respect to BJA grants, has anybody pursued those for this project or to increase funding for the project?
So we have a new budget director, Dale Phillips. One of his priorities, one of my priorities, and Chief Jones's priorities is to find all the grant dollars we can. So he's expanding what we're looking for and really putting in a more robust framework for looking for grant money.
Okay.
So we are doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you all. This is a question probably for Susan. Can you help me better understand the fiscal impact of the 1-year delay?
Sure. Right now, they delayed the project by 2 years, and that frees up $3.4 million for fiscal capacity for other projects in the CIP. Most of that money, however, is in the first of those 2 years that have been delayed. So if we accelerated by a year, it would be a $3 million impact, ballpark. So that is something that I could go back and talk to DGS and the police, as well as my fellow colleagues that deal with CIP, to see if there's any way that we could play with these numbers a little bit to see if we can make that impact a little bit lower. That's not something I can give you right now, though. It's something that I have to look at further.
Gotcha, thank you. So I'm hearing that this is an important project and that we need to get done. I'm also hearing that you've found good substitutes for now, and since the bulk of that fiscal impact is going to be in year 1, I think that does make a compelling case for going with the 2-year recommendation.
Are you saying 2 years without the 1-year acceleration?
So, correct, yes, since that,
Leave it as recommended.
to leave it as recommended, exactly.
And where are you on this one?
Candidly, I understand the need. I also understand our budget restraint, and so I'm, especially given the number of other things that are causing the CIP to feel tension right now, would prefer to approve it in its current state, and that hopefully if there were additional funds that were able to be gathered via grants, then they would be able to accelerate it in that fashion.
And that's fine. I understand where you are, though obviously I believe we should accelerate by the 1 year. So if we don't accelerate by the 1 year, then this would not come back up for discussion for 2 years?
No, next year's the full CIP.
Oh, so it's full
Yeah.
CIP next year. Well, then, you know what? We're going to have the discussion anyhow. It's basically the same thing. So I can live with that. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Very good on that one. Thank you. And Ms. Frog, are you clear where we are?
Yes, I
at
am.
this
Thank
point?
you.
Okay. And then the next item is the PSTA Academic Building Complex.
This is mostly a technical adjustment. It's a closeout project. They're just finding $1.2 million in savings that they're removing and spending elsewhere. And I'm recommending approval as submitted by the executive.
And PSTA stands for Public Safety Training Academy.
Correct.
I always like to be clear on what we're discussing. Are we, any discussion on this one? We're fine on that one. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dice and Mr. Ossent. And with that, we're going to go back to item 1, or go to item 1, which is a briefing on the police use of force. Used to what?
Chair Katz, I realize I used an acronym in my questioning and I did not explain it. I'm trying to be better about that. So I said BJA, that's the Bureau of Justice Assistance. So for all those at home who didn't know the acronym, there you go.
Well, and I appreciate the full confession, but when we do this, government does this all the time, and then it just becomes part of the language, and most people don't. I mean, there's times that you do and times you don't, but thank you for that. And good morning all who's sitting at the panel and everyone in the audience for that matter. Chief Jones, good morning, and would you like to please introduce the people who are with you?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and council members. It's good to be with you all this morning. Of course, you've already heard from Assistant Chief Darren Frank, the Chief of our Management Services Bureau. Next to me is Captain Stacy Flynn. She is the Director of our Policy and Planning Division. Next to her is Captain Ian Clark. Captain Clark is he is assigned as the Director of our Public Safety Training Academy. And then next to him is our newly promoted Lieutenant Brendan Johnston, and he is now assigned to the second district. I can't keep up with all of these lieutenants, but he's recently, his most recent assignment was at the training academy in the use of force field. So.
It was always my theory that if the principal didn't know my name, I was better off. So the fact that he couldn't remember where you were, Lieutenant, is a good sign for you. And with that, unless there's opening statements from the committee members, we're going to turn to Ms. Farag. Ms. Farag, please.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give a very brief overview and then turn it over to the police department to go through their PowerPoint presentation. As you well know, since 2020, there's been a lot of police reform discussion and policy changes and legal changes. And there have been several that have been placed on the department in the past several years that have changed the use of force standards, have imposed different types of mandatory training, have prohibited different types of force used, have newly defined the use of force to expand to include the pointing of any type of weapon. And we'll get into how that's impacted the data in a little bit. As well as report writing too. So within that context as well is de-escalation. While the department has had de-escalation woven through pretty much every aspect of its training in the police academy, Chief Jones did implement an ICAT training module back in 2021, I believe. It's when it started with recruits. And that is a very specific type of de-escalation program
And
that's meant
ICAT stands for?
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I had it written in my notes.
It's footnoted in there.
Yeah,
so.
it is footnoted, right.
And it deals primarily with,
Go ahead.
It's the integration of communications, assessment, and tactics.
Thank you.
and this piece deals primarily with people who have weapons other than a firearm or not armed, as well as people that are undergoing mental health crises. And as you know, police use of force against people undergoing mental health crises is disproportionately higher than the average police contact. So there is data in here on stats. The one piece I will note, which I alluded to earlier, was I believe the total uses of force last year in 2022 was 1415, and that is significantly higher than the year before. A primary driver of that increase is now including pointing weapons at people, but it's not the only piece of the increase. So with that, I'll turn it over to the department, and they can go through their use of force and their ICAT and then be available for questions.
Thank you very much. Chief.
So again, good morning. I am going to just give just really kind of a broad overview of our 2022 use of force report, to give a little of background to some of the significant changes, because there have been significant changes as a result of law and policy changes. So I want to kind of give some credence to that, and then I'm going to turn it over to some of my other experts here to kind of go into more of the PowerPoint presentation, giving more defined information on the definition of use of force, as well as the history in regards to much of that legislation, and to talk about our de-escalation process, about how that works. So, and as anticipated, the expanded reasons now requiring the completion of a use of force report, which is where we get our statistics from, have created a significant increase in those use of force reports. So effective July 1st of 2022, we made a significant change in our policy. Our previous counteracting a physical struggle, a term used to identify the need for the use of force report, was expanded to include the following language. Quote, anytime the intentional use of any physical effort other than compliant handcuffing or unresisted escorting are used to control, restrain, or place an individual in custody, unquote, as a mandatory reason to complete a use of force report. By clarifying the definition, a sharp increase in reports was anticipated. For example, someone simply pulling their arm away would not have previously generated a use of force report. Now all officers are, based upon that definition, are with transparency providing us with the information in these use of force reports. I also will note that all documented use of force reports are required to be reviewed by supervisors with body-worn camera review, as well as the police report and the actual use of force report for consistency. If there's any inconsistent statements made or anything that's documented that's not correct, it's not within policy, those reports are then sent to the Internal Affairs Review, which falls under the Office of the Chief for further for us to further look into from an investigative standpoint to see if an officer violated the policy. As noted, pointing a weapon effective February 1st of 2022, pointing a service weapon, a taser, or pepper spray at an individual requires officers to complete a use of force report. While previously an unreported statistic, there were 503 of these events that occurred in 2022. Expanding the reporting requirements, as I noted, was better for transparency and better data analysis. Although there were 1,415 use of force reports in 22, compared with the 593 in 21, which was a 139% increase, eliminating the 503 weapon pointing would have brought that number down to provides more of an accurate comparison to the 912 events compared to 593 and 21. Many which likely involved, again, the broader definition of the physical struggle. There are many reports that I've gotten from executives that have noted that there are times that in fact, it was very difficult to even note that there was the physical struggle, but the officers made the decision that they wanted to make that report out as a use of force should an individual not comply. Making arrests and serving emergency petitions are the primary activities when force is used. Assaults and mental health issues dominate the primary offense type when force is used, followed by drug offenses and disorderly conduct. Offender injuries. Approximately 20% of the claimed offender injuries are unrelated to the officer's use of force or are unfounded. It should be noted that many subjects will indicate they need to go to the hospital just to avoid jail. Contributing factors. There is a combination of mental health, illness, alcohol, and drugs. All of those are a factor in 2/3 of all the uses of force. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Assistant Chief Frank, who'll continue the conversation and help walk us through the PowerPoint slide with the other.
And maybe you're going to get to it in a second, and if you are, that's fine with me. But Chief, what you just said, well, I believe you, what you just said, was that if an officer pulls a weapon, whether it be a taser or a gun or whatever, that they have to write a report. Is that for each and every officer that pulls that weapon, or is that if one officer, if they write the report that we know? How does that work?
So that's captured on so these are individual encounters, so the information about each officer, if there's 3 officers arresting one person and they all draw their service weapon, that would be recorded on the use of force report, but it's not a duplicate.
It's not a duplicate. Go ahead, please. That's one. I thought you were saying that you wanted to speak, Chief. You're giving that it was only one.
One
Okay.
report, 3 names would be that.
Is that what you're saying? One report, 3 names.
Correct. In the statistical analysis, we have the data on the officers and what they did and their use of force.
Okay. I'm good. Please continue.
So Chief Jones hit on many of the topics that we wanted to speak to before we do the PowerPoint. I want to draw a finer point on just a couple other items, especially when you talk about the significant increase. Again, it was anticipated that this was going to happen. Not only with the change in definition, the pointing of weapons, but also the officers' desires to make sure that the absolute correct information is out there, because they understand how their community wants them to be as transparent as possible. They also understand from the direction they've gotten about how important it is that we have accurate data. So in some instances, what we have seen is an over-reporting. We have had instances where when the supervisor or executives, and again, it's a multi-layer review. It goes from a sergeant to a lieutenant to a commander to be reviewed, use of force reports, all 1,400 plus of these. In some instances, a number of instances, the supervisors have had to go back to the officers and say, can you tell me what you were referring to when they used force? Because that tensing of an arm, you can't really see it in body-worn camera, and as Chief Jones noted, and we actually have been talking about it when Chief Jones and I started, he's got a couple more years.
Wow.
We
And you're
never
so close to him. Yeah.
we never would have reported those, because it was just part of, think about anyone in a stressful situation. They're being placed under arrest. They're not exactly happy. You always get tension. You always get an arm and a second thought. No one just, I'm sorry, I can't say no one. But in the majority of cases, people just don't automatically throw their hands behind their back and say, okay, go ahead and put handcuffs on me. So now we're getting that data, and it's important data to know because it shows what we're doing, and also it gives a greater review. While we do while we do random review of body-worn camera now, you can only hit so much every month. When we report these uses of force, no matter how slight, that is automatically reviewed, and that's just good policy. I do want to draw your attention to, again, to more of the reason for the increases that we saw. We did see our calls for service go up by 3% from 2021 to 2022.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Assistant Chief, go ahead, Councilman.
Sorry about that. Clarifying question. So you were saying that there is sometimes an over-reporting. What did you mean when you said that that there's sometimes over-reporting, or is there duplicate reporting in some way, or did you just mean that it's just more reporting now because it's caused by...
Probably a better way to say it is very precise reporting.
Okay.
Like they feel that with the definition that we've put in there, I'm sorry, to me it's over because, again, I came up long ago and we would have never reported these events because it was just part of business. Now we're better. So now it's very, very precise. No matter the slightest of force is being reported.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify the clarifying,
Uh-huh.
So if a person tenses up, they might not be fighting the officer, but they tense up and the officer is aware of that.
Correct.
But and in some cases, maybe even the person who's being arrested might not even realize how tense they're being for that moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, with all the training that we've done, with the multiple changes that we've done, it's really taken hold. And the officers have heard the community. They've heard what is expected, and they also understand how important it is we get this right, especially with body-worn camera in Overwatch. They wouldn't want to not report something that they should. So again, the slightest use of force, they're reporting. They're also reporting injuries to suspects more when they're claimed. We get a lot of claims that people say, I'm hurt. Officers are doing a very good job at, no matter what the claim, they're writing it down. And in addition to that, the majority of injuries, or a lot of the injuries that we're seeing, they're related to something else. They're related to, like, if we were in a pursuit and someone wrecked their car, they would have an injury, and then we would take them into custody. They would resist or flex or do any number of things. There'd be a foot pursuit or a pointing of a taser or a pointing of a handgun. When the event was done, they've sustained an injury in the entirety, and they would report that injury, just to be sure that the data is there. Going back, I did want to point out the number of arrests. So in 2021, we had 6,145 arrests. In 2022, we've had 7,115. So that's a 13% increase in arrests since the previous year. Again, just another item pointing to why we have increased numbers on use of force. As we also said, unfortunately, we've had more instances in dealing with persons in a mental health crisis, and that is another driver. Arrests and dealing with folks that are in a mental health crisis, and getting them to the EAP, the emergency evaluation petition, getting them to the hospital. Sometimes we have to use force to handcuff them and get them to where they need to be to get the help they want, because they don't want to willingly go. And we want to ensure that they get the help they need from any of the terrific resources we have here in Montgomery County. So again, officers are reporting that. And with that, those were the things that I wanted to touch on, and we're going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint. And we're going to turn it over to, so Captain Clark is now the director of the Training Academy. Lieutenant Johnson was the supervisor of our newly created Use of Force and De-escalation unit, and they have a terrific amount of experience in not only a career as law enforcement officers, but now with this new frontier we have in reimagining public safety and really incorporating de-escalation. I will tell you, we were discussing it the other week. You know, we've done de-escalation a long time. When I came on the department, it was called verbal judo. We have much better names and acronyms for it now. But it's much more enhanced, and especially when we look at dealing with suspects, it's much more enhanced when you talk about procedural justice, but even more importantly, in dealing with people in mental crisis. We have expanded our training at the direction of Chief Jones. We had a CIT unit doing a fantastic job, but we have expanded since Chief Jones was sworn in with emergency training, because we knew how important it was to get our folks the best information on dealing with people in crisis. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Clark and Lieutenant Johnston.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, council members. Lieutenant Brendan Johnston. Again, I'm in the 2nd District now. Previously, I was the Sergeant Supervisor of De-escalation Force Training Unit. Thank you for having me here this morning. I'm going to start with a conversation on use of force, kind of a history, what our current policy is on some of the things, the case law, and where we got to where we are today. So first of all, what is the use of force? And the chief already hit on it earlier. It is the intentional use of any weapon, instrument, device, means, or physical efforts by law enforcement other than compliant handcuffing or unresisted escorting in response to the action or inaction of an individual in order to control, restrain, or overcome the resistance of an individual to gain compliance, control, or custody. Okay, that's a long definition. The simple fact is, anytime an officer takes any physical efforts, whether it's with a weapon, instrument, or physical means, other than compliant handcuffing or unresisted escorting. As the chief noted, this is a change from our previous policy, which was counteracting a physical struggle. This change went into effect July 1, 2022. With the new Maryland law, we updated our policy. I would expect to see another increase in the 2023 use of force numbers, as this was only in effect for half the year. So I think when we see a full year of this, moving forward after 2023, we could start to compare numbers. So when can an officer use force? An officer may only use force under the totality of the circumstances when it is necessary and proportional to prevent an imminent threat of physical injury to a person or effectuate a legitimate law enforcement objective. All right. The authority is limited by the applicable laws of Montgomery County, the state of Maryland, federal law, the United States Constitution, and MCPD policy. So when an officer is using force, they can be judged in many different arenas. First, by policy, for some sort of policy violation. They could be held accountable in state court, both civilly and criminally, and federal court, both civilly and criminally. So the first use of force standard didn't occur until 1989 when the Supreme Court set a standard. Prior to that, there was no legal standard on use of force. And in that 1999 court case known as Graham versus Connor, the court recognized that the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, and its calculus must embody an allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to use or to make split-second decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. So what this standard looks at is it looks at, was the force objectively reasonable from the perspective of a reasonable officer at the moment force was used without the benefit of that 20/20 hindsight, right? What did the officer know at the time? We can't take into an account things that we learn later on, maybe background information the officer didn't have at the time. What did the officer know at the time they had to make their decision? Some of the things that they look at are what they consider surf factors. Okay, these are facts that an officer makes their judgment based off of. And these factors are not all inclusive, but are seriousness of the crime, what type of crime are we dealing with, the immediacy of the threat, how immediate is that threat to the officer or others, and then the R and F are kind of combined. It's a resistance and or fleeing. Was the subject actively resisting the officer, or were they actively fleeing? These are some of the factors. There are many other factors that go into the decision of whether or not use of force is So up until 2020, that was the use of force standard. It still is the standard in federal court cases. It's actually been upheld by the Supreme Court recently in the City of St. Louis v. Lombardo case. So that is still the federal standard. Now we have new standards here in the county and with the state of Maryland, and that's what we train to. So our first changes came with the Montgomery County bill changes, Bill 2720 in year 2020, that required that we must create a policy. It required the chief to create a policy that prioritized the safety and dignity of every human life. It promoted fair and unbiased policing and protected vulnerable populations. It also set a minimum standards for use of force. All right, that is, our use of force policy must comply with the Constitution of the United States of Maryland. It prohibited deadly force unless it is necessary as a last resort and creates no substantial risk of injury to a third person. It prohibited striking a restrained individual. It added duty to intervene if another officer is using excessive force or committing a crime. It prohibited neck and carotid restraints. And it prohibited less lethal force unless necessary and proportional after exhausting all alternatives. Excuse me. So that was the first change in our use of force. The chief created that new policy, which went into effect May 17th of 2001. Every officer in the department received training on that new policy before it went into effect. Then Montgomery County Bill 4520 created some more things. It required Montgomery County Police to report information to the executive and council by February 1st of each year. One of those requirements included the pointing of a service weapon, taser, or pepper spray at an individual. As the chief mentioned, this is now captured on our use of force report, and it is reported as a use of force. Significant increase in use of use of force reporting was expected, and we saw that when the numbers have come out. After that happened, Maryland General Assembly created the Public Safety Accountability Act, and out of that came a new law that related to use of force that required, or where officers could be held accountable for violating a criminal offense. And that is, a police officer may not use force against a person unless, under the totality of the circumstances, the force is necessary and proportional to prevent an imminent threat of physical injury to a person or to effectuate a legitimate law enforcement objective. It also states a police officer shall cease the use of force as soon as the person's under the officer's control or no longer poses an imminent threat of physical injury or death to the police officer or another person, and the police officer or the police officer determines that force will no longer accomplish a legitimate law enforcement objective. So this was a new state law that went into effect July 1, 2020, and any officer who violates this section of the law and it results in serious physical injury or death can be charged with this and can be sentenced to up to 10 years in jail for this misdemeanor crime. This law also brought in some other things. It states that when time, circumstances, and safety allow, officers must take steps to gain compliance and de-escalate conflict without using physical force. In my experience, officers don't want a physical confrontation. When you have a physical confrontation with somebody, you risk not only injuring them, injuring citizens, but also injuring yourself. So officers typically try to de-escalate situations when possible. It also states that we must intervene to prevent or terminate the use of force by another police officer beyond what is authorized. So that is just building upon what the Montgomery County Council passed in 2020 and that duty to intervene. We're required to render first aid and promptly request medical assistance. And this was another big change. Fully document all use of force incidents that the officer observed or was involved in. Prior to this change, the documentation would go on a single report. We'd have these use of force reports. Now, anybody who observes that use of force, so if there are 5 officers on scene and one officer uses force and the other 4 observe it, well, all 5 officers are generating a report. They're all writing supplement reports and documenting their observations or their actions, kind of like a witness statement. This is what I saw. The law also requires officers to undergo certain training on when they may or may not draw a firearm, point a firearm at a person, and options that are less likely to cause death or serious physical injury, including scenario-based training, de-escalation tactics and techniques, and reasonable alternatives to decrease physical injury. We have been doing scenario-based training for years in Montgomery County. I've been with the county since 2005, and we've been doing scenario-based training since at least then. I know well before then. I'm sure the chiefs have went through scenario-based training when they went through the academy. De-escalation, as Chief Frank mentioned, it was called verbal judo when I first came through the academy as well. It is, now we are teaching the ICAT training guide, and I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. Reasonable alternatives to decrease physical injury. We teach different defensive tactics, control holds, and things like that to reduce physical injury and to be able to take somebody into custody. So in conclusion, as I stated, we have to follow multiple different use of force standards. We have a federal standard, we have a state standard, and we have our county policy. We teach our officers the county policy and the Maryland state standard because that is the most strict of all the standards. The federal standard, the objective or reasonableness standard that we get from the Fourth Amendment, is a little bit more broad. So as long as our officers are acting under the state law and the county policy, they're going to be within the federal standard. The federal standard of objective reasonableness, like I said, is a little bit more broad than the necessary and proportional that we're now held to. So with that, are there any questions on that? And then I'll do a brief overview on ICAT.
Not, first off, thank you for the PowerPoint presentation. And body-worn cameras have certainly changed the discussion from all sides, from the person who says, the civilian who is being arrested, to the police officer. We know from various angles what's going on. But you mentioned the difference between the federal standard and the state standard and the local. If I think we need to be clear that if a federal marshal is here or an FBI agent or whatnot, they are not covered by our standard. They are covered by, I'm saying it, but I wanted you to say whether I'm right or wrong. They are covered by the standards of their departments. Is that correct?
That'd be correct.
And if they request a Montgomery County police officer to go with them for whatever they're doing, they would still be under their standard, and we would still be under the county standard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, what I thought. Any other?
So let me go through this, and I'll go in a different order than I was going to, but since Chairman Katz just asked the question about body-worn cameras, so there was a policy that MPCTC developed back in 2016 to guide departments that were starting to use body-worn cameras. When did MCPD first begin using body-worn cameras? 2015. Thank you. And am I correct in stating that under state law, MCPD is actually not in the queue under state law compliance for having all those officers who interact with the public on a regular basis having body-worn cameras until July 1st, 2025? Is that correct?
Correct. We've met that standard. Every single officer has issued
Right.
at least one body-worn camera.
Right. And now you were talking about the Graham standard, the federal standard. So an individual who files a Section 1983 claim because they feel aggrieved by an officer's action in federal court, they would be subjected to the Graham standard and the reasonableness standard articulated under Section 1983, not the Maryland state standard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I recall your use of force documentation from pre-state statute time because I actually had borrowed a copy of it to use when the state passed the Safe to Learn Act, which included within it a provision where school security employees who are not law enforcement and school resource officers would both be subjected to the same reporting requirements for any use of force involving a school security employee or an SRO and a student, because your form was very comprehensive, although it didn't include things like the pointing of. That language was not within the form at that time. There's the couple of Montgomery County bills that were passed prior to the Police Accountability Act, and also the bill related to using not all law enforcement trainers. That's something that MCPD has been doing for a long time. Is that correct? Having non-law enforcement instructors include part of the instructor in either academia training or in service training?
Yes. Morning, Captain Ian Clark, Training and Education Director. That is correct. We do have non-sworn instructors. For example, in our entry-level training for both our Constitution law and our criminal law blocks of instruction, we actually have a state's attorney that's assigned to the Public Safety Training Academy to do those blocks of instruction.
Okay, thank you. And
Councilmember.
non-law enforcement trainers also help write your training, correct?
Correct, and I wanted to draw one more distinction on the civilian side. So every officer now goes through our CIT training. They get
Right.
it after they go to the academy now, and then we've had thousands of officers that have gone through CIT training. The majority of that training is done by professionals in the mental health field, not
Right.
officers.
Right. Thank you. Save my last question. I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Thanks. A couple questions. One is, have you quantified how the jump from 593 to 912 how much of that is from the expanded definition of force? So in other words, like looking at what prompted it, would it have fallen under the old definition versus the new one?
So council member, we have not. And so, and in the discussion that we've been having recently is to better quantify that, sort of the levels. Because when on our form, when it says, what force did you utilize, for example, did you utilize your hands, or did you use a weapon as an example? Well, the majority of our use of force are under the category of hands. But that doesn't tell, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't, based upon this expanded definition, it doesn't necessarily tell us a whole lot. So I've requested that our policy and planning division go back along with the academy so that we can categorize sort of the minimum level of force that is utilized versus something that would be more significant where you utilize your hands or your feet as an example in that category. So that is something that we're going to change in order to be able to quantify that in the future, because I think that's important for us in our to be transparent.
That's great, and that's great to hear about the that. Then you'll also have that data to figure out, okay, what types of use of force are particularly prevalent, and what can be done to address that. Are there training things that could be associated with that, and so on. And then we can also look at how those numbers compare to the changes in numbers of arrests and that kind of thing. Do you have an estimate on when that data might be available?
Well, that will have to be implemented like within this year, which means we probably won't start capturing that data probably until about mid-year. So by the time we kind of create this and maybe create a new form, we've got to go through some processes in order to do that. We have to work with the FOP as an example in order to be able to create such a form. So that takes a little bit of time. So I couldn't tell you exactly when that will go into effect, but here we are already in March. It would take us a minute because we haven't really clearly defined that form as of yet.
Gotcha. Okay, and so we're looking at changing the documentation process to be more specific moving forward, as opposed to going back and trying to hash out what happened to all those. You'd have to go through all the. Okay. Yeah. All right. My other question is, you mentioned for body-worn cameras, I think you mentioned that you do random review now. I was just curious to know more about what that looks like, who does it, with what frequency, what are reviewers looking for, is it documented in any way, or how you're using the information?
So there's two different things that happen here. First and foremost, all use of force reports, it's not random review, it's mandatory review. Okay, so all use of force reports require that eyes be put on the review of the force that was utilized, reading the reports, and making sure everything is consistent with what's seen on the body-worn camera. If there's something that seems to be, if it complies, then that use of force report is then forwarded to our policy and planning division. If it does not comply, then then it will be sent to internal affairs for an investigation to look into the non-compliance possibility. There is a random review body-worn camera unit that we just established at the end of the year. In fact, the council last year made a law that said that we would create this unit. It is a two-person unit. There are two sergeants that have been in a position since December. They work under the direction of our under the Police Accountability Division, which is under the Office of the Chief. So that's a direct report to me. And then they provide me with random reviews of all body-worn camera footage. It's not just, it could be a use of force situation. It could be just a simple interaction with the citizen on the street, for a call for service, traffic stop. It could be a variety of different things. So they do The random reviews, they're looking again to see if proper procedures follow in that regard, and that anything that is outside of policy and there's a performance issue that needs to be addressed, then those issues are documented and sent to the commander of that particular officer in order for that issue to be addressed.
Thank you. Let's see. I was particularly concerned by the use of force in mental health situations. I know nobody wants that, and that's going to be particularly traumatic for the folks who are in those situations, especially if we're just trying to get them to the hospital. And so I just wanted to bring that to our collective attention, because ideally, when we're dealing with a mental health situation, we're going to be able to not have any use of force as much as possible, especially if we're just trying to transport someone. And I know that that can take a very long time, but I think that this does certainly bring to mind the importance of beefing up our, MCOT and so on, the ranks over there to be able to handle more of those mental health calls. Also because, in order to make sure we're focusing on de-escalation, and it can take, a very, very long time to cajole someone to get where we want them to go, that what I've heard from our from our officers on the streets is their time could be better spent in other places in a lot of those situations. And I understand also that can be a morale issue when we have hours upon hours spent in those positions. So just wanted to name that as well.
Thank you. I think we need to be clear here on what is use of force again. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but in order for someone to be charged for violating the state use of force, an officer had to intentionally violate this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the officer would violate it under the standard that the state has now set. So if they utilize force outside of that standard, for example, it wasn't necessary, or it was not necessary and proportionate, as an example, it didn't fit that category, then the officers could be charged in a violation of the use of force policy. That's correct.
In as much as everyone would hope that no one ever had to use a tactic that for a use of force, what is being done is certainly within state law. It's within, if someone is fighting a police officer, if someone is hurting another person, someone has to stop that escalation. And I know we're going to get to the second part of your presentation, but the use of force, the reason we have these policies is so that it's clear what a person can and can't do, though we'd all hope, police officers and everybody else, hope that wasn't necessarily what had to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, as Lieutenant Johnson spoke about, officers do not, want to come to work and have to get involved in a fight, as an example. I can tell you I've been involved in fights over the course of my early part of my career, and there is high risk of injury, and many times our officers are injured, sometimes in assaults that when individuals are getting ready to be taken into custody, or just in an interaction that an officer may get assaulted, and therefore there's an arrest, and then there ends up being a fight as a result of the attempt to arrest. So again, it's still, even with that being the case, officers again are still under that standard that even in the fight, that they are only to do what's necessary and proportionate to get that individual under control and get them into custody. It also makes sure that they do not strike an individual after they have been handcuffed, that they're not, so they're still not being assaulted. So there are still these rules and the law that states that, and the policy states the same. So,
I've often heard, we're going to turn to your further presentation. But I've often heard that domestic violence situations are perhaps the most difficult for everyone involved, the police officer, the family that's going through this, and obviously it's a tough situation. Unless there's other questions, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, there was a 27-page opinion that was requested by Colonel Jones when he was superintendent of the Maryland State Police to request that the Attorney General explain the definition of necessary and proportional as used in this new use of force statute. That was done prior to the time that the statute went into effect on July 1st, 2022, so that training that was going to be done for all the different departments could meet the standard as interpreted by the Attorney General, which is the binding law of the state of Maryland. And in addition to that, following the issuance of that opinion, and in work that I was doing with crisis response with our fire EMS and law enforcement working together on particularly difficult situations, they asked for clarification, and I did do an advice letter at that time. I think, Chief Jones, you do have a copy of that, which clarified that when you're using force that's necessary and proportional to achieve a legitimate law enforcement objective and prevent the threat of harm to the officer or to someone else, that someone else may be that person in crisis, and that it was achieving a legitimate law enforcement objective if you needed to prevent harm to that individual of self-harm in order to get them emergency petitioned, as Assistant Chief Frank had referenced earlier, that fell within the scope of appropriate use of force under the new standard as interpreted by the Attorney General. So I just wanted to put that out there since there were some questions about crisis response.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Mink.
Thanks. Just wanted to follow up on my previous question. I think prior use of force reports had included information about contributing factors like alcohol, but also including mental health, and wanted to see if do we have that data? Can we get that data? And especially the mental health piece, whatever data is available on that is going to be especially important and time sensitive as we're developing, an appropriate MCOT versus police response framework.
Yes, we do have that data. Our use of force report for the 2022 year is being reviewed right now. It's in its final draft form. We expect to issue that very, very shortly. So it does have information there. What I will say is, as we're going through this process, use of force is our policy and our procedures is a very living, it's probably one of the most dynamic and living issues that we have in our department right now. So we are finding unintended consequences of information that all of a sudden we decide, oh man, it'd be great to have that. So we're continuing to refine. We're using secondary clearance codes now to bolster the information we have in dealing with public in general, not just on use of force incidents, but capturing things such as, is there a mental health component to the call? Is there alcohol or drugs component to the call? So that's another effort that we're going through. Dr. Stoddard and myself lead a use of force policy committee for the department. We're meeting in the next 3 weeks to start our next version of our use of force policy, taking the lessons that we've learned in this very quick implementation. We have had so many changes over the last 3 years. We're learning lessons every week. In fact, going through the exercise of creating the 2022 data, we're learning things that we haven't quantified. De-escalation. We don't have accurate numbers on the thousands and thousands and thousands of interactions where de-escalation by officers is used. So we're going to work on coming up with a way to quantify that, because again, it's our use of force and de-escalation unit. We have to show progress, and the only way to do that is to collect data and have an understanding of where we are and going forward how we can make things better. So the last point also I apologize, council member. I did want to hit on something that Lieutenant Johnson did say. We do expect these numbers to increase for 2023. We'll have a full year under a new standard. There's nothing to say that come July 1, 2023, we don't change our policy again to include an even broader definition to collect data. We want to, as Chief Jones noted and as you mentioned, we want to fine-tune our information more. I'll give you an example. You actually referenced it about having data. So when we look at our 2022 numbers, the primary use of force officers had was use of hands. So in 918 cases, they used their hands. Of those, control tactics were 80% of the use of their hands, which could mean grabbing my wrist to put a handcuff on it, grabbing my arm to keep it from not being handcuffed, and 18% of those uses of force by hand were just non-compliant escorts. I'm going to grab someone by the arm and take them to a car, and they don't really want to go get in that car. So we're gonna as we work through this policy group, we're going to take the lessons learned so far and see how we can get even better data for our analysis, so that our use of force de-escalation unit can fine-tune what they're teaching, whether it be ICAT or another model. There's a number of different models that are out there. Right now, ICAT, we like what's there, and we like what we've been doing with use of force, but we're willing to learn and get better at what we're doing.
Thank you. Following up on that, yeah, I would say, yeah, certainly I can see why we would expect like one-to-one, the numbers are going to go up as we change policy, which is why it's so important to have this more detailed data so that the comparisons can mean something. Around the de-escalation numbers, that makes sense to want to have those numbers. Do we have a set de-escalation policy, procedures that are, that we have something to compare what folks are doing with that set policy? So we'll be able to quantify it in a meaningful way?
We do it, and again, this is one of the challenges we've had because we've been doing de-escalation for decades. But now we're expected to define it and to put it into policy and also find a way to, it's a tough area to put a policy around, especially to incorporate everything. So that's part of what we're going through with the use of force policy group. Is refining that definition. We do have standards that we put into place. We have standards, and Lieutenant Johnson can talk more to that. We have standards and the beginnings of better definitions for de-escalations and the expectations, but it's going to be a work in progress because it is a new way to define what we're doing. So it's going to change, but we're up to the challenge.
Thank you. And then I also wanted to note that the use of force reported incidents was 4 times higher for black persons than for white persons. And so what are your thoughts on that? How can we learn more about how we can remedy that, why that is happening? If you could just share your thinking on that and what we're doing moving forward.
Well, I think that what needs to be a better breakdown in order to have a better analysis of that is to really, this is what we've typically, the use of force reporting that we've provided is consistent with what we've done in years past. But what needs to be done is we really need to break down a lot more into specifics. For example, what is the racial breakdown in the mental health community? Our interactions. What's the racial breakdown of those individuals that are utilizing alcohol? What are the situations in which the use of forces are utilized and there have been more abundant racial breakdown in all of those? Because again, sometimes we've seen that individuals that I know in certain areas of the county where drug abuse is a high reason for use of force for non-compliance, alcohol abuse for non-compliance in many of the cases. So I think for us to be able to really report out on that, we have to get more specific into looking at those numbers, and it's something that we have that's on our table to do that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand. Are we thinking that if we better understand the racial breakdown around when contributing factors like alcohol, drug use, or
right.
That when we know that those were prevalent, that is going to explain away the 4 times
It's not
higher?
so much explain away, it helps us to understand it better. I'm not trying to explain anything away.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I understand.
So me being from the African American community, right, I don't try to explain things away. I try to make sure that we understand, because I know sometimes there's a resistance, sometimes just naturally, right? And particularly when you have people that are under the influence of alcohol, they're not always compliant, and that can be across all races. So I'm not explaining anything away. I am only trying to get else to help us understand better, right, in our interactions with individuals of different racial groups, particularly if we know that individuals are under the influence of alcohol, as an example. And again, it also ties into what's the level of force being utilized even in those interactions. Is it simply the hands and non-compliance, which is the majority of our cases? What is the other categories that are involved in this? Is it disorderly conduct? Is it domestic violence? What is the entire picture that we're really looking here that then again helps us even in our training that we can be better serving, and maybe even figure out ways to sort of have preventive models out there that we can prevent these interactions so those numbers can go way down. I would like to see the numbers go way down, but I have to also be realistic. The way that we've really kind of broadened our definition of use of force, right? That we see that there's even just the mere grabbing of the arm is going to be reported, but we've got to be able to look and see the different levels and put all of those factors and break those numbers down in order to come up with a better preventive model.
Gotcha. Okay, and thank you for that. And I don't mean to accuse you of explaining away. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying. And I completely agree that more detailed data is going to be really important and critical for figuring out how we can reduce use of force, where we can reduce use of force across the board. That's going to apply, for all races, all types of situations, and so on. But I wanted to see how are we going to address the disparity, because we're seeing a disparity here, and everything you said is true, but it's true universally, right? For anyone who's, a situation where we've got alcohol, drug use, mental health issues, and so on. But it seems to me that we need to do something specific to address the disparity, and this is a difficult question, obviously. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it's important that we start off by saying, this is a problem, and we need to work on figuring out how we're going to specifically address this part of the problem.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of these things that I think it's a broader problem. It's an issue, like you said, it's universal. But it's a reality of how can we bring other community, partners in order to be able to really kind of get this message across, and how can we, the police, also work with community in order to be able to try to have this as a preventive measure, in order to make sure that these things don't happen in the very first place. So if there is, for example, if there's an individual that is under, for whatever reason is under arrest. For example, let's just make it simple. Somebody has a warrant for their arrest, okay? If you have a warrant for your arrest, you're not going to be able to solve the problem. This is what I tell people all the time. You're not going to be able to solve the problem on the street, right? It's the only way you're going to resolve it is when you're brought before the judge here in the criminal justice system, in the court. So there's no need to fight on the street, right? There's no need to resist. The warrant exists, it has to be served. And so what we try to explain to the community is just best to cooperate and then just go and have that handled through the court system. So sometimes people, want to, try to avoid apprehension. That's a natural thing in some phases of individuals who have been involved in the criminal justice system. So they will run, and therefore, if they're caught, there might be a use of force utilized with them trying to place them in custody. Or there may be some people who just don't want to go. But again, if we are trying to work with them and explain to them that, listen, we're not going to resolve this on the street, let's try to get this in the court without you resisting at all. There's no use of force. We just take you before the commissioner, and then you get your court date, and it gets handled. that's one of the things I think, and it's just one of the things. I think there's a lot of other things that probably ideas need to be brought to the table. But I think we have to have the data so we can break these things down, so we can bring the necessary people in the room to address that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree about the importance of the data. And I think what I want to drill down on is that, these are lots of different reasons why some groups might be more likely to require use of force, I feel like is what I'm hearing. But I think we need to figure out, are Black people really 4 times more likely to require use of force here in Montgomery County than white people? That to me seems unlikely, because Black people are no more criminal, no more violent, no more anything than anybody else, right? So the fact that we're seeing these disparities at such a great, at such a great margin, while there may be some disparities that fall in under some of the other contributing factors to a minor degree, maybe, which I would think that we might see that go in some different directions as well, for other groups. To see that it's 4 times higher here, the use of force is, makes me wonder what we can do on our side differently to improve those numbers. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping that in mind as a possibility, and thinking about what we can do to address that. The opportunity that we have here to remedy that from our side, right? We can only control so much with the public. We can control more things on our side, and so I want to make sure that that we all, and I include all of us in that, are holding ourselves accountable to be looking for those opportunities of how we can improve those numbers, because this is really alarming, I would say. Thank you. And then one last number that I would be interested in getting from you is how many calls, going back to the mental health question, how many calls are being diverted to MCOT? And I'm asking MCOT related questions because, of course, this is a conversation that we've had on an ongoing basis. And so the more information and data that we're able to get on that side of things, the more helpful that's going to be for us. Do we have data on diverted calls?
We are collecting that data. We can get an update.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hopefully your new records management system is going to be able to track more detailed data. Is that?
Yes, and so we are actively, we've just procured our new records management system. We are on a very aggressive timeline to try to get that activated by the beginning of 2024. It is going to be more really enhancing to gather additional data, because we've had a large number of requests of specific data sets from the community and others. So we are actively working in regards to that, but that's looking like a 2024 startup date. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
And I did want to thank you. And I did want to note that Dr. Earl Stoddard is here in the room as we're discussing this. And with that, we're going to turn back to you, Lieutenant, to talk about ICAT, which stands for Integrating Communications, Assessments, and Tactics. Please.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to do a quick overview on what ICAT is, and this is the de-escalation training guide that we're using at the Academy to formulate our training now. So as Councilmember Katz said, integrating communications, assessment, and tactics. It's integrating a bunch of different things that we learned individually to this point and bringing them together into one training. So the ICAT focus, this focuses primarily on a patrol response. Okay, so this is primarily for patrol officers dealing with non-firearm incidents. The reason why I specify non-firearm incidents is because when someone has a firearm, they can reach out and touch you from a long way away, right? Somebody has a knife or a bat that's kind of a proximity weapon. You have to be much closer. We can slow these situations down. It is that integration of crisis recognition, communications, and tactics. It also has a piece on officer safety and wellness, the physical, emotional, and legal wellness of the officer. So ICAT consists of 7 modules, and we'll get into those in a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit of how it was developed. So this wasn't just like a few people getting together. There were over 60 representatives of law enforcement from all ranks, from the patrol officer up to chiefs of police. Okay, there are 35 different organizations. They all came together in New York to discuss how can we create a de-escalation training. How can we create a guide to put out to law enforcement agencies? These were city, state, federal officers. Officers from the United Kingdom came over. They do really well in de-escalation. They came over to advise on this as well. What they did is they reviewed policy, procedure, training, and the critical decision-making model that they utilize over there in the United Kingdom. And what they came up with was this training guide. Now, this training guide was put out to law enforcement, and law enforcement agencies began training it. This is the only de-escalation training guide that has been researched and has been proven to decrease use of force incidents and injuries. In 2020, the University of Cincinnati Center for Police Research and Policy conducted a research with the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department. And what their research found is after ICAT training, they noted a 28% reduction in use of force incidents, a 26% reduction in citizen injuries, and a 36% reduction in officer injuries. So this is a researched training guide, and that is one of the reasons why we use it. So what does ICAT do? ICAT integrates skills we already use and applies them to non-firearm critical incidents. Again, like I said, we used to train these different skills in silos. Now we kind of bring them together. The modules talk about, first there's an introduction, then they go into the critical decision-making model, crisis recognition and response, tactical communication, operational tactics, integration and practice, and then the last module, which is fairly new, is called Step Up and Step In. It's a duty to intervene type of module. The critical decision-making, we've been teaching a critical decision-making model for years. I was an instructor in the academy over 10 years ago, and we were teaching it then as well. The ICAT critical decision-making model expands on what we were teaching. What it does is it brings in to that decision-making process, it asks for the officer to consider what your police powers are and what the policy is as it pertains to the situation you're dealing with. This new model is all centered on the ethics, values, the proportionality, and the sanctity of life. So again, it expanded what we were already teaching. Crisis recognition. All officers, as the chief mentioned, are now required to go through CIT training, crisis intervention training. They're required to do that shortly after they graduate the academy, and we're continuing to get officers through who have not been through every year. Tactical communications, operational tactics. Again, we're just bringing these things together for officers to be able to train, and we do provide scenario-based training. Not only we do this in a multitude of ways. One, through viewing body cameras and incidents and having that like roundtable discussion, but as well as having real scenarios for officers to participate in, where we have role players brought in who have specific jobs, and the officers have to work their way through the different scenarios. So what ICAT is not. It's just important to explain what it not as it is. It's not telling officers to walk away from danger or ignore danger. We don't want to train officers that when there's a dangerous situation to walk away, right? They still need to provide that protection to the public. It's not trying to put officers in an unwinnable situation. It's actually trying to create a more winnable situation. It's not telling officers they can't use force, including lethal force, when it is necessary and proportional. There are times, unfortunately, when force is necessary and proportional, and it's going to have to be used, and this is not telling them they can't do that. And it doesn't limit options for officers. What it does, it's all about increasing options for officers. We want officers to be able to make the best decisions possible for each situation. So de-escalation is all about options, right? Options are impacted by time, circumstances, and safety. The more time you have, the safer environment you can create, the more time you have to de-escalate. We talk to officers about slowing incidents down. We want them to slow things down. That's been a real focus on our training in the past few years. Unfortunately, some situations present the necessity to use deadly force immediately, and the options to verbally de-escalate or use less lethal force options are not available. You could encounter somebody, you could walk into an active shooter where somebody is actively taking lives. You don't have the time, the circumstances or safety do not allow you to attempt to verbally de-escalate that individual. The only potential way could be using deadly force immediately. ICAP training promotes the use of basic skills and tactics to preemptively set up police response to mitigate officers from being exposed to the immediately need for deadly force. So, for example, somebody armed with a knife in a room by themselves, right? They're not presenting that immediate threat. We can slow that down. Do we need to enter that? Do we even need to enter that room? Right? Let's slow it down. Let's provide the safest environment possible to deal with this individual, to speak to this individual, and try and resolve it without using any force if possible. So again, we use scenarios. We have several videos that we show officers specifically on this, and I think of one out of North Carolina that we show where the officers dealing with a suicidal subject with a knife in a room, and the officers do a great job. They stand outside. They don't enter the room. They de-escalate from distance, and they're able to talk the person into putting the knife down and going to the hospital. So that is the type of model that we're pushing forward in training, and we've been doing this now since 2021 is when we first introduced the critical decision-making model through in-service, and we now put on a full 20-hour ICAT training block to all recruits while they're in the academy before they hit the road. With that, are there any questions about that? Again, that's a very high-level overview. This is a 20-hour training program. I didn't want to take up too much of your time. So, are there any questions?
First off, there again, thank you for the PowerPoint. I do think it should be noted, and sometimes we take things for granted that we shouldn't, but technology has certainly helped over the years. I mean, there was a time that a person was given a billy club or some sort of a weapon to use during an event that you didn't want to have happen. But now we have other means that you don't have to hit someone, that you're using what other means to be less harmful. And of course, body-worn cameras have helped, as I said earlier, from all sides. And I also have to say, and that I go to the many times go to the award ceremonies where police officers have saved a person's life, and I guess you have them quarterly. I think I'm right on that. And it's amazing first off, the amount of people in Montgomery County whose police officers have saved their lives. It's amazing how people have gotten themselves into that situation where that police officer had to do that and put themselves in harm's way. But it's also really gratifying to see the sense of pride in the officer who has just risked their life. I mean, this is several months later that is being brought up, that I'm aware of it, that those officers, with their sense of pride that they were able to save a person's life in putting themselves in harm's way. And I don't think that should get lost in the scenario. I've often said that we don't advertise that enough. Advertise is not the right word. We don't let people know of how many times this happens, and they're not as aware. They are aware when as I like to call them, the God forbids in life happen, but we're not as aware of the times when, because of someone's heroic activity, that it happens. Anything else, please?
Yeah, just to follow up, because there were some earlier questions about data, and then you've explained the training here, and I'm thinking through all this and going, are you aware of any of our universities that are now maybe going to be studying this and doing a multi-factor statistical analysis? Because you can't draw a correlation, one number, one factor, right? And that's part of the challenge with both teaching under the Fourth Amendment, right? Any search and seizure type cases are all fact-specific inquiries. That's why we have such a large body of case law, because each factual nuance presents a new opportunity for the Supreme Court or the Maryland Supreme Court, formerly known as the Court of Appeals, to opine on that issue. It's not really any different under the new use of force statute and the standard that is set there for necessary and proportional. It is a fact-specific inquiry that is multivariate. Right, and so I'm just wondering if there's any. Are you aware of that? Is that something maybe we might be able to? Again, I'm going to go back to Bureau of Justice Assistance, get some grant funding for somebody to do this type of multi-layered statistical analysis on.
Thank you, Council Member. We would like to do that. One of the challenges that we face is we have an outstanding policy and planning division. We collect data. But for those of us that remember our college years and even our master's programs, just raw data is just data. The analysis that needs to go into it to really find causality, to find meaning, so that we can act upon it. We need to look to academics for that. We have looked at one example, and we've created some good relationships with Montgomery College, University of Maryland. We've looked at the University of Texas. They are doing some very good work in analysis of a number of different areas, fighting violent crime, traffic stops, and I believe one of their venues is use of force. So we'd like to find a connection again to start having this analyzed at an academic level, because that's just going to be the best product.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I could also add, our department is a member of Major City Chiefs Association, and so and many of the large police departments across the country have been engaged in these. For example, Louisville, working in the University of Cincinnati is a great partner, and BJA is a great partner that is at many of our conferences and our meetings.
Right.
And it's an important opportunity. It allows us to have these types of conversations about how we can look to figure out ways to extract and really do an analysis outside in an academic context. To help us with really the analysis of this and how we can improve upon many of our functionality. So. And
same with the NJI, National Justice Institute.
Yes.
And right, and that's part of the That's the National Justice Institute is part of the United States Department of Justice. It's a research branch that does grant-funded academic research that would encompass what I'm asking about here. Correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to acknowledge that my staff was just at one of those recent award ceremonies, acknowledging the officers who've saved lives. So we appreciate that, certainly. And then just wanted to quickly reiterate the importance of, and I know you're working on this, developing those clear, precise guidelines, policies, and procedures for implementing, de-escalation. Our de-escalation policy that we have moving forward, so that we're able to, have metrics and data and everything on that moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Ms. Farag, on this topic?
No, that's it. I'll get with the department to get the follow-up information that you've all requested.
Okay. Again, thank you for doing such a thorough job on the packet. To everyone here, did you have something else? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. Apologies. I meant to ask this earlier and I forgot, so I'm looping back now to the county use of force policy. There's a portion of that that requires the police chief to develop use of force guidelines specifically for vulnerable populations, work with community groups and civil rights groups, human rights organizations, and so on. And so I just wanted to get a status update on that.
Sure. So we've created a developmental disability Chiefs Liaison Group that we met with in 2021. 2022. That was created in 2022, and we should be meeting with them in the upcoming, I think, in a meeting probably in April We have a meeting that's probably due, but we have been working with them, as well as we have an African American liaison group that I work with, as well as we established an Asian American Pacific Island work group, as well as the Latino work group that we have, liaison group. So yes, we still have some work to do, but we've got a lot of moving parts, but we're going to be moving, and some of those groups we meet with on a monthly basis. Some don't want to meet as often, so we meet more on a quarterly type basis.
Thank you. And then are there any pre-existing community groups or civil rights or human rights organizations that you're consulting with as you're putting together these recommendations?
There's nothing that at the top of my head that we're currently working with.
Okay. I think that's part of the, I'll go back and check, but I think that's part of the county use of force law, right? That's requisite. So I just want to make sure that we're including those
Sure.
groups, that we have a clear picture of who those groups are. And then do we have a timeline of when you're aiming to have those guidelines ready for your officers?
I don't have a timeline as of yet, no.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. And with that, thank you all for being with us. We are adjourned. Thank you.